In our previous life, after our parents got divorced, my sister didn't hesitate to choose our mother and pushed me to our father, who was an alcoholic and often committed domestic violence. Later, our father lived a glamorous life, and I became a dark horse in the ballet world with a promising future. On the contrary, our mother was still an ordinary migrant worker, and my sister failed the college entrance examination and missed the chance to go to university. To comfort my sister, I even canceled my performances. However, she looked at me with envy in her eyes and pushed me off the tall building when I wasn't paying attention. When I opened my eyes again and saw my sister throwing herself at our father without hesitation, I knew that she had also been reincarnated. Our mother called and said that my sister Delilah had failed the college entrance examination and hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 2 days. Afraid that something might happen to her, I didn't hesitate to cancel my ballet performance the next day and rushed to our mother's house. In the room, Delilah was curled up at the head of the bed. After I patiently persuaded her for 2 hours, she suddenly said that she wanted to go to the top floor to look at the starry sky with me. To help her relieve her mood, of course I agreed. However, to my surprise, Delilah pushed me off the tall building. In my terrified eyes, I saw Delilah's distorted face due to jealousy. Astrid, why is your life so good? Even with that scoundrel, you could still become an enviable dark horse in the ballet world, while I didn't even get into university. Since you're always better than me, just go to hell. The huge sense of weightlessness and the excruciating pain after hitting the ground made my legs go weak and I almost slipped off the chair. Seeing me like this, my mother's eyes turned red with heartache. She held me and Delilah tightly as if she were a mother lion protecting her cubs. Judge, you can't award the children to Victor. He's such a scumbag and won't treat my children well at all. Still immersed in the fear of death, I was pulled back to my senses by the surrounding environment. I looked around in disbelief. This was clearly the day when our parents went to court during their divorce when I was 12 years old. I had actually been reincarnated. My father was sitting opposite, casually crossing his legs. 2 money losers. Do you think I want them? Give me 500,000 yuan and I'll give up my custody rights. My father was not only an alcoholic and committed domestic violence but also a gambler. He lost most of the time at the gambling table. To pay off the debts, my mother worked 2 jobs by herself but still couldn't fill that big hole. My mother was trembling with anger at Victor's words. He had also said this in the previous life, but where could my mother get 500,000 yuan for him? At that time, Delilah was hugging our mother's arm and crying loudly, saying repeatedly that she didn't want anyone except our mother. Dad doesn't like me. He likes my sister. Mom, don't abandon me. Let my sister follow Dad. What Delilah said was just to arouse our mother's sympathy. Compared with our father who committed domestic violence, of course she wanted to follow our mother. At that time, to avoid embarrassing our mother, I finally took the initiative to say that I would follow our father and help Delilah achieve her wish. But this time, when faced with the same choice again, Delilah was like a hungry wolf seeing meat. She waved our mother's hand away and threw herself in front of Victor directly. Dad, I'm willing to follow you. My mother didn't expect that Delilah had suddenly changed her mind. Obviously, she had been crying and saying that she must stay with her before. Victor was clearly also surprised that Delilah would take the initiative to follow him. Our mother wanted to say something more, but Delilah interrupted her. Mom, the judge has already said that you and Dad should each raise a child. Could you please stop being so selfish? Victor had disliked our mother in the first place and wanted to make her unhappy. Now that Delilah was on his side, he immediately smiled and patted her on the head. Listen. Even Delilah has found out that you're a selfish person. Come on. From now on, we two will depend on each other. Dad will definitely let you live a good life. Delilah left with Victor, smiling happily. Before leaving, she didn't forget to raise a provocative smile at me triumphantly. She silently mouthed, Astrid, it's my turn to enjoy a brilliant life this time. I looked confused and pretended not to understand what she was saying. After moving out with our mother, we lived in a shabby tube-shaped apartment building. When school started again, I was going to enter the first grade of junior high school. In my previous life, I became famous in the ballet world, which was also achieved by sacrificing all my study time. Now, I didn't have much knowledge in my mind. My mother never needed me to help with the housework, so throughout the whole summer vacation, I almost stayed at home previewing the courses for the first grade of junior high school. It was different for Delilah. Victor was lazy and hated work. Every day, besides drinking, he just played cards. Delilah took care of almost all the house cleaning and 3 meals a day by herself. Even if she didn't do something well, Victor would beat and scold her at will. Several times, Delilah regretted it and wanted to run away, but when she thought of how glorious I was in the previous life, she could only grit her teeth and endure it again and again. When school started, she then realized that 2 months had passed and Victor hadn't even thought about sending her to learn ballet at all. In my previous life, I participated in a ballet competition held by an institution in the first grade of junior high school, won the championship, and then started my ballet career. Now that Victor didn't send her to learn ballet, how could she live the brilliant life I had in the previous life? However, what she didn't know was that the reason why I could practice ballet was that when I worked part-time in the dance studio, I occasionally practiced dancing following the teacher through the glass door. Finally, the dance studio teacher found that I had good talent, voluntarily waived my tuition fees, and recommended me to participate in the competition. Only then did I embark on the path of ballet. After Victor came home drunk again, Delilah finally summoned up the courage to ask him to send her to ballet classes. Victor's cloudy eyes rolled around, and then he picked up a beer bottle and threw it at Delilah. "You money losers still want to learn ballet? You've been eating and using my money every day and still want to continue to cheat me out of my money? I think you're getting too comfortable and asking for trouble." Delilah screamed and dodged the beer bottle that was thrown at her. She was trembling with fear. Looking at the man reeking of alcohol, she didn't dare to continue speaking. On the first day of school the next day, I wasn't surprised to see Delilah with bruises at the corners of her mouth in the classroom. After all, we had both graduated from the same primary school. As twins, we had been in almost the same class since we were little. Seeing me dressed clean and tidy, Delilah had hatred in her eyes. Compared with me, who was taken good care of by our mother, Delilah, who had been busy with housework at home all the time, looked rather messy. Since I had previewed the courses in advance, I could handle the teacher's questions with ease. As for Delilah, she was relying solely on the foundation she had laid in the previous life. Although Delilah had failed the college entrance examination in the previous life, the courses in junior high school were just a piece of cake for her. When I met Delilah in the toilet after class, she glared at me fiercely. "Astrid, even though you've previewed for so long, you're still no match for me. As long as I seize the opportunity of the ballet competition again, you'll never be able to surpass me." I pretended to be puzzled and looked at her. "Sister, what are you talking about?" Delilah sneered and directly bumped into me with her shoulder. "It doesn't matter if you don't know. You just need to be trampled under my feet." After Delilah disappeared from my sight, I curled the corners of my mouth. Since she wanted my life so much, I wished that she would never regret it. Delilah was finally sent by Victor to take ballet classes. It wasn't because Victor had a sudden change of heart, but when the debt collectors chased Victor to the door with knives, Delilah put a poster of a competition in front of Victor. On the poster, there was a line of striking red big characters: "The first prize is 1 million yuan." Delilah looked uneasy but still wanted to take a gamble. "Dad, as long as you send me to ballet classes, I will definitely win the first place in this competition. Then our family will have money to pay off the debts." My father was about to tell her to get lost, but when he saw the bonus on the poster, he couldn't take his eyes off it. "Are you really able to win the first place?" Seeing that he showed signs of relenting, Delilah's eyes lit up and she nodded extremely confidently. "I will definitely win the first place for you. Otherwise, I'll accept it even if you beat me to death." In the end, Victor really gave her money to practice ballet, although that amount of money was only enough for her to practice in the worst institution. In order to win the championship in the competition at one stroke, Delilah almost devoted all her attention to ballet. Some teachers couldn't bear to see that she was so slack in her studies and talked to her several times. However, Delilah was dismissive of it and even said, "Studying can't change fate at all. Even if I don't study, I'm still better than those who only study blindly." Seeing that persuasion was useless, the teachers had to turn to Victor, but his attitude was even more exasperating. "What's the use of a girl reading so many books? My daughter is learning ballet now just to be able to make money in the future. Don't meddle in other people's business." Seeing this, the teachers stopped asking for trouble and let Delilah do as she pleased. However, when the final exam results came out, I, who had been studying hard all the time, was still dozens of points behind Delilah. The teachers also found it unbelievable. How could Delilah, who skipped classes all day to learn ballet, have got the first place in the class? Could it be that she was really a genius? But what was even more unexpected was yet to come. After half a year of training, Delilah really made her way into the top 8 of the ballet competition. If the opponents she had met before were of uneven strength, which could still allow Delilah to advance with difficulties, then from the top 8 on, it was really time to compete with real strength. In my previous life, I was a dark horse in the ballet world that everyone praised. Naturally, I knew that ballet couldn't be mastered quickly in just half a year. I thought Delilah would stop here. But when I saw the familiar music and dance steps on the stage, I was shocked. Delilah was dancing the same ballet that I had won the championship with in my previous life. Her dance steps were skillful, and it was obvious that she had put a lot of effort into it. However, after all, she was imitating my past self, so the whole dance lost its aesthetic feeling and looked like a puppet on strings. But it was enough for her to defeat her opponents and enter the top 4. Compared with her advancement in this round, I was more curious about how she would continue to move forward since she had already used her trump card. But no one expected that Delilah's opponent slipped somehow during the performance, fell directly off the stage and was immediately sent to the hospital. Delilah was thus promoted to the top 3 without any effort, but in the following rounds of the competition, as expected, she failed frequently and finally only won the 3rd place. Although she didn't win the 1st place, of course Victor didn't really beat Delilah to death. After all, the 3rd place also had a bonus of 100,000 yuan, which also helped him out of his urgent need. What's more, since she had shown her talent in the ballet competition, quite a number of entertainment companies had extended olive branches, wanting to sign Delilah under their names. However, Delilah was still a minor, so all the contracts were first sent to Victor. Victor was not well educated. Among a pile of contracts, he only looked at which one offered the highest commission in the end, and then took it upon himself to sign one of the companies for Delilah. Delilah didn't have any objections to this. In her opinion, all these were signs that she was about to become famous. In order to get more attention, Delilah could only practice ballet even harder. However, she didn't have high talent and her age wasn't an advantage either. No matter how hard she practiced, it was difficult for her to stand out again. After several minor competitions, the best ranking she got was only the 2nd place. Seeing this, the talent agency could only change its strategy. Before, they wanted Delilah to take the path of a ballet queen. Now that the hope was slim, they simply decided to change to star making. To the public, Delilah was still a ballet dancer, but now she was given many labels such as genius girl, the most beautiful dancer, graceful figure, and so on. Delilah rarely came to school, but the fact that she always ranked first in the final exams every time was a good proof of her labels. As a result, even though her performance in ballet competitions was not outstanding, she still gained a large number of fans. In order to maintain her figure, on the few days when Delilah occasionally showed up at school, the meals were all delivered by Victor himself. After having lunch in the cafeteria, I was just about to enter the classroom when I heard Delilah mumbling complaints inside the classroom. Delilah looked at the lunchbox full of green vegetables in front of her. After poking at it with chopsticks, she slapped the chopsticks on the table angrily. "Boiled vegetables again. Dad, didn't I say that I wanted to drink pork rib soup today?" Facing the cash cow, Victor changed his previous attitude towards Delilah and tried to comfort her in a gentle tone. Pork rib soup has oil and salt. What if you gain weight after eating it? Aren't you afraid that your fans will unfollow you when they see you getting fat? Do you still remember the dance competition you participated in half a month ago? I heard that the person who won the first place only weighed 70 Jean. Delilah, you're still too fat. Starting from tomorrow, for the sake of your career, you can only eat one meal a day, you know? Delilah choked a little, but after hearing about others' weight, she still gritted her teeth and nodded in agreement. Just as she raised her head, her eyes happened to meet mine as I was standing outside the door with a cup of milk tea in my hand. I didn't miss the fleeting longing in her eyes. In my previous life, in order to maintain my figure and under the double pressure of Victor and the company, I went on a crazy diet and finally suffered from anorexia. I even had half of my stomach removed in the end. Fortunately, in this life, I didn't have so many concerns. I had the right to eat whatever I wanted. This kind of life was simply something I had longed for but couldn't have in my previous life. Seeing me, Delilah snorted coldly. Then she started to eat the vegetables in the lunchbox without any relish. Victor didn't even spare me a glance. I was happy to be left alone. After sitting back in my seat, I began to continue immersing myself in the sea of exercises. During these 3 years, I studied hard every day. Although in exams, I was always ranked second by Delilah, I could clearly feel that the gap between me and her was narrowing little by little. However, something happened to Delilah in the last 2 months of the 3rd year of junior high school. Delilah also knew that her current public image outside was that of a genius girl in the ballet world. Therefore, in the month before the high school entrance examination, she also had to attach importance to her studies. If she could get the top score in the high school entrance examination this time, it would undoubtedly add another layer of glory to her. But before she could stay in school for a whole morning, Victor directly interrupted the teacher who was in the middle of teaching. Delilah, what are you still standing there for? Come with Dad to catch the plane. Apparently, Delilah didn't know what activity Victor had accepted for her behind her back. There was confusion on her face at this time. Victor didn't care that the class was still going on. He rushed into the classroom in a hurry and pulled Delilah up. Hurry up! There's only one flight to that country. You'll regret it if you miss it. Hearing the word country, I was shocked. The painful memories that had pierced my heart in my previous life flooded into my mind. In those days, Victor also arranged this trip for me. He lied to me, saying that I was just going to perform ballet for the dignitaries and the wealthy. In fact, he sent me to be toyed with by those people. Those were the darkest 3 days of my life. Later, I tried to commit suicide. But in the end, I still didn't dare to do it because I still wanted to live. So between living in pain and the fear of death, I grew to dislike ballet and even suffered from depression. Don't go. I don't know if it was because of the last bit of blood relationship, but I still stopped Delilah, who was about to leave the classroom with Victor. Annoyed by my meddling, Victor pushed me away roughly and cursed under his breath. Get out of the way. You were the one who wanted to follow your useless mother. Now that you see Delilah is reaching the peak of her life under my cultivation, you still want to interfere? Do you still want to compete with Delilah? Delilah was influenced by Victor's words and also believed that I stopped her because I wanted to hinder her career. Astrid, don't you dare compete with me. Watching Delilah leave with Victor without looking back, I let out a sigh of relief in my heart. Everyone makes their own choices. I've already warned her. As for what happens later, it all depends on her own fate. Delilah didn't show up on campus again until half a month later. Unlike before when she was dazzling and looked exquisite from head to toe, at that time, she looked dull, wearing wrinkled clothes, and stood at her seat like a wooden figure. Seeing me, she suddenly became very excited. She rushed to me and asked me if I knew something. Looking at Delilah in front of me, I couldn't feel any pity in my heart anymore. Seeing that I denied it, Delilah seemed to have all her strength drained away and burst into tears in despair. Victor came to the school several times to ask Delilah to go home with him, but Delilah firmly refused, saying that she didn't want to see those people again. During the following period of time, she came to school on time every day. The once full schedule of announcements seemed to disappear overnight. In just this short half a month, a new ballet dancer emerged in the ballet world. The new dancer became famous so quickly that she was even more popular than Delilah. Some classmates whispered privately, "Is Delilah not popular anymore? Didn't you notice that she hasn't had any announcements recently? It seems that she's been surpassed by the new star." When seeing the new ballet dancer who had just won the gold medal in a competition on the school's promotional big screen, Delilah's patience and jealousy these days completely exploded. That afternoon, Victor came to the school cheerfully to pick up Delilah. Before leaving, Delilah, in front of the whole class, said with a tone of desperate certainty, "I, Delilah, will always be popular. No one can replace me." I didn't see Delilah again until the high school entrance examination. But just as she said, she did become even more popular. Delilah also began to participate in ballet competitions frequently and almost won the first place every time. The voices that had questioned her lack of real achievements disappeared after she won several championships in AROW. As she became more and more popular, her background was also dug out. During an interview after a competition, a journalist asked her, "We've heard that you have an older sister. Her academic performance in school is on a par with yours. I wonder if she also has outstanding talent in ballet like you." Hearing the journalist mention me, Delilah's face darkened. After all, when it came to ballet, I was far more talented than her. In my previous life at this time, I had already become the top new ballet dancer. Before the journalist could notice anything unusual, Delilah quickly put on a smiling face again. "My sister is devoted to her studies and hasn't shown any talent in ballet." The journalist asked again, "You and your sister are in the same class. Your sister's academic performance is quite good too, right?" The smile on Delilah's face grew even wider. "Although I always score a bit higher than my sister in every exam, I really admire her for her hard work." Once this interview was published, netizens couldn't help but praise Delilah one after another. Her fans left messages online one after another. "My baby is so amazing. Talented and smart. Oh my God, I'm so envious of Delilah. She's like a perfect all-rounder. If I had such a sister, I would be so ashamed every day." The topic about whether the big gap between sisters would make the weaker one jealous even became a hot search on Weibo. In the end, Delilah's fans even reminded her to be careful of me in case I hurt her out of jealousy in the future. Just when Delilah was riding high, the results of the high school entrance examination came out. However, surprisingly, Delilah, who had always been called the genius girl, only got mediocre results in the high school entrance examination. But I overtook her on a bend and won the title of the top scorer in the high school entrance examination in our city. When someone with ulterior motives posted this online, the netizens who had been paying attention to Delilah immediately exploded. Many people began to question whether Delilah's genius girl image was just hype. Victor looked at the online public opinion and questioned Delilah angrily, "What's going on with your grades? Don't you know you've messed up? Now people online are asking you for an explanation." Delilah hadn't expected that she would stumble over the high school entrance examination and even be left behind by me. She was depressed in her heart and was also accused by Victor, so there was annoyance in her tone. "Isn't it all because you kept arranging announcements for me all day long? Have I ever had a proper class in these 3 years?" Hearing Delilah talk to him like this, Victor's temper flared up at once. He grabbed Delilah by the collar. "You little bitch. I've been nice to you for a few days and you've forgotten who your father is, haven't you? I'm telling you, if it weren't for the fact that you can make money for me, I would have beaten you to death long ago. I can make you famous, and I can also ruin you. Don't be so ungrateful." Delilah hadn't seen Victor's furious side for a long time. Seeing it again at this moment, she was so scared that she froze on the spot. I'll find a way, Dad. Don't be angry. I'm sorry." Seeing the fear in Delilah's eyes, Victor nodded with satisfaction. Then he slumped back onto the sofa and started drinking. I'm out of money. Give me another 500,000 yuan. In order to quell the online public opinion, Delilah posted a Weibo message. On the surface, that Weibo post said that the reason why she got mediocre grades was that she wasn't feeling well on the day of the exam. But every sentence was secretly implying that someone had set her up behind her back in order to surpass her. Although Delilah didn't say who it was, her fans had already targeted me first. I knew that our Delilah baby was so innocent. She would be tricked by her vicious sister one day. In order to outperform Delilah in grades, she even plotted against her own sister. How vicious! The high school entrance examination top scorer who doesn't deserve the title has such a dirty mind. As the matter got bigger and bigger, just when some netizens started to want to dig out my address, I, as the person involved, calmly registered a Weibo account. The first thing after registering on Weibo was to directly at Delilah and invite her to have a live stream one day later where we would give questions to each other. I didn't expect that I would fight back directly. More and more netizens came to watch online. Even Delilah's fans shouted for her to accept my challenge quickly so that she could slap me, the high school entrance examination top scorer, in the face. Delilah was a bit hesitant at first, but seeing that the popularity of the live stream was getting higher and higher, plus her confidence in having received 12 years of education in her previous life, she finally agreed. At the beginning of the live stream, 70 to 80,000 people flooded into the live stream room. When I showed up, at first, the barrage was full of messages scolding me. Suddenly, a few remarks expressing amazement at my appearance popped up. Seeing this, Delilah obviously didn't look too good, but she still tried to persuade me. Sister, why don't we just forget it? There are so many people here. I don't want to embarrass you. I was too lazy to waste words with her and said to just start. Seeing that I was determined to fight back, Delilah didn't want to make a fool of herself. The first question she gave was beyond the scope of the middle school examination syllabus. It took me a lot of effort to solve this question. Seeing that I couldn't come up with an answer for a long time, Delilah's fans on the barrage began to mock me crazily, saying that this was solid proof that I was cheating. Just when everyone thought that I couldn't solve the first question, I showed the answer on the screen instead, not expecting that I could solve it. Delilah's complacent smile froze. Even the barrage changed from mocking me at the beginning to questioning whether I had cheated. In these 3 years, although Delilah had attracted a lot of fans, she also had quite a number of anti-fans. Now that there was a chance to put Delilah down, they naturally wouldn't let it pass. You people are really something. The whole process of this young lady solving the problem was under the camera. How could she cheat? I say, Delilah's fans, don't be so hostile to this ordinary young lady. First, care about whether your sister can solve the first question. I didn't pay attention to the voices on the barrage. Instead, I showed the question that I had prepared long ago. This question was adapted from the first math question in Delilah's college entrance examination in my previous life and wasn't too difficult. But the moment Delilah saw the question, her face immediately turned pale. It wasn't because she saw the trick in the question, but because she found that she couldn't even understand the question. Seeing Delilah holding the pen and not moving for a long time, some people in the barrage began to urge her. Delilah forced herself to scribble on the scratch paper, racking her brains to search for the high school knowledge points she had learned in her previous life that still remained in her mind. However, 3 years of idleness and having fun made it impossible for her to write down the formulas with ease anymore. After the whole live stream, I defeated Delilah with just one question. Some people in the barrage said that I was cheating and that the questions I gave couldn't be solved by middle school students. But then some netizens pointed out that the question Delilah gave was even more difficult and even more out of scope anyway. After this live stream, I proved that my strength had surpassed Delilah's. And she ended the live stream in a hurry that day, and the internet was full of scolding remarks about her. Because of this incident, I also became a bit popular. As soon as I entered the Key High School, quite a number of teachers and classmates already knew about me in advance. However, what surprised me was that Delilah also entered this school. After asking around, I found out that although her scores didn't meet the admission standards, she was admitted exceptionally as a special talent student. But what surprised me even more was that I ran into her on the first day of school.At that time, I had just finished giving a speech as the freshman representative. Backstage, Delilah, wearing a gorgeous white swan dance dress, stopped me abruptly. Astrid, don't be complacent. I'll pay you back bit by bit for the humiliation you caused me last time. Don't even think about having a better life than me. I folded my arms and didn't want to pretend with her anymore. During the 3 years of junior high school, I had deliberately shown weakness to her at first, and then gradually became at odds with her. Delilah, you, the ballet queen, why didn't you go to your opera house to shine brightly and came to school instead? Mentioning this, Delilah felt a rush of anger in her heart. Since the live stream fiasco last time, Victor had started to force her to study and do exercises every day, striving to regain the position of the genius girl as soon as possible. In the past, she only needed to perform everywhere and then enjoy others' admiration. Now, she had to rush to announcements while staying up late to study, which gradually made her physically and mentally exhausted. Several times, when she forced herself to perform ballet, she almost fainted on the stage with her eyes going black, but obviously, Delilah was really not cut out for studying. Her grades didn't improve despite her constant staying up late. Seeing that there was no hope of turning things around through studying, Delilah could only place her hope on ballet again. In the past 6 months, she had been forced by Victor to come to school every day. However, she couldn't let go of her face as the ballet queen. She behaved eccentrically in school all day long, causing classmates to keep their distance from her. But there were also some bold classmates who couldn't stand her behavior and directly said mercilessly, "I don't know what she's so proud of. That new female ballet dancer named Xiao Xian is much better than her. I know her. I saw her photo on Weibo last time. Oh my god. Her waist can be so thin. I used to think Delilah's waist was already thin enough." The rumors in school, combined with the decrease in announcements, made Delilah very vigilant. In these years, she knew that her ballet skills hadn't improved. The reason why she could still be active in the ballet world was entirely because of the fans attracted by her face and figure. If she lost her figure and face, she would be completely done for. Thinking of this, Delilah clenched her fists tightly. She definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. 2 days later, Victor asked for a long leave for Delilah. During those 2 months, Delilah didn't even show up online. When she appeared on the big screen again, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Delilah had lost more weight. Especially her waist, which was even thinner than an adult's 2 palms put together. Her legs seemed to have only a thin layer of skin attached to the bones. Unlike her thin limbs, her breasts were even rounder and fuller. She still had charm in every smile and gesture, not looking like a high school student at all. When asked if she had any secrets to losing weight, Delilah smiled and said, "I just have a body that doesn't gain weight easily. Everyone, don't deliberately lose weight just to imitate me." But as someone who had already experienced it once, I knew that Delilah was forced by the capital behind her to lose weight compulsorily. To have a thin waist, 2 ribs were removed. To have thin legs, she had liposuction crazily. To have fuller breasts, silicone was added, but all of these would cause great harm to the body. In my previous life, I could hardly sleep well at night because of the pain. Why do you all look so gloomy today? I put my school bag on the floor of the dance studio. Several teachers didn't seem as enthusiastic as before. This dance studio was the place where I worked part-time and started my ballet career in my previous life. In this life, although I didn't take the path of a professional ballet dancer, I still came here voluntarily during the summer vacation after graduating from junior high school. At first, they didn't plan to accept me because I was already too old to learn ballet, but after I did a few dance moves based on my memories from the previous life, they immediately changed their minds. So whenever I was free on weekends, I would come to the dance studio to practice dancing, and thus my dance foundation wasn't wasted. The dance studio hasn't been able to train star dancers in recent years. The boss doesn't have enough funds to support the dance studio anymore. I frowned. In my previous life, because I became famous overnight. This dance studio became very popular, and dancers came to study here one after another. But now, because of the changes in my situation, this dance studio has actually come to the point of closing down. I noticed a poster in the teacher's hand. What's this? The teacher sighed and handed the poster to me. It's a ballet competition that will be held in the city soon. If our students can win a place in this competition, maybe the dance studio can be saved. But now the dance studio simply doesn't have any outstanding students to participate in the competition. I noticed a poster in the teacher's hand. What's this? With the affection for the dance studio from 2 lifetimes, I couldn't just stand by and watch it close down. I held the poster in my hand and suddenly said, "Don't worry. The dance studio won't close down." After several years, when I put on the ballet costume again, I felt a bit dazed. After the impulse of signing up for the competition for the sake of the dance studio faded away, I was also feeling nervous now. In my previous life, I would definitely have scorned this kind of competition, but now it surprisingly made me a bit nervous. After all, I hadn't competed for several years, and my competitive state wasn't that good. Fortunately, the opponents I encountered at the beginning weren't that strong. After rounds of qualifying competitions, I gradually regained the feeling of standing in the middle of the stage in my previous life. I burst into everyone's sight like a dark horse. It was not until I entered the top 4 that I noticed that Delilah also participated in this competition. Perhaps it was a joke played by God that we didn't encounter each other in the previous rounds of the competition. When the host announced the list of the top 4 finalists, I noticed the expression of disbelief on Delilah's face. She didn't even care that there were other people backstage and rushed straight to me, grabbing my shoulders tightly. "How could you participate in this competition? How can you do ballet? Don't you forget." Some busybodies secretly held up their mobile phones. I calmly pushed Delilah's hands away. "Aren't you always boasting that you're a genius, girl? Sister, maybe my talent is just a bit higher than yours." Delilah seemed to have heard a joke and shouted loudly, "Impossible. Astrid, you can't be better than me. Don't think it's such a big deal that you've made it to the top 4. I'll definitely make you leave the stage in disgrace." I shrugged. "I hope you have that ability." I faced off against Delilah in the final competition. Delilah, wearing a dance costume with elaborate workmanship, walked up to me like a noble white swan. She first carefully examined herself in the mirror and then asked me, "Am I beautiful?" I didn't know what she was up to, but I still told the truth, "Ugly. Since you're going to perform Swan Lake, but your costume is piled with gold and silver. There's nothing pure and holy about it at all." Hearing my words, Delilah was furious as expected. She covered her chest and cursed at me. "What do you know? You're just jealous that my dance costume is more beautiful than yours. You're just jealous of me." I knew that the reason she covered her chest was that after having 2 ribs removed, she would feel a dull pain in her chest whenever she took a deep breath or exhaled vigorously. Seeing my nonchalant look, Delilah casually picked up the water on the table and splashed it at me. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and my dance costume wasn't affected. The teacher who came with me to the competition, seeing the water stains on my face, screamed in anxiety and without caring about Delilah, quickly took me to the washroom. Seeing me leave, Delilah had a smug smile on her face. In this competition, I was the first to perform. Delilah, who should have been waiting backstage, was sitting in the audience at this moment, smiling at me with an ambiguous expression. As the music started, I rose on my tiptoes and completed the whole dance with big movements. When I finished my last move and applause rang out, Delilah's previously confident smile completely disappeared. It wasn't until her agent found her in a hurry and pulled her to get ready to go on stage that she seemed to come to her senses and hurriedly made her way through the crowd to the backstage. When Delilah appeared under the spotlight, she once again became the pure white, little white swan. However, the audience could hardly fail to notice that Delilah was obviously absent-minded today. She made mistakes several times during big jumps. Delilah also realized that she wasn't in the right state today. But the more impatient she was, the more mistakes she made. Even when it was almost the end, somehow she slipped and fell directly off the stage. Just like the opponent she encountered in her first competition, the sudden accident made the audience exclaim in surprise. Delilah fell to the ground, sweating coldly all over her head because of the pain. After this accident, it was self-evident who the winner was between me and her. I didn't lose. It's Astrid. Astrid tampered with my dance shoes. Delilah ignored the pain all over her body. She took off her dance shoes, and sure enough, there was a shiny layer of something on the soles. She screamed hoarsely and accused me across the crowd. Astrid, you actually smeared oil on the soles of my shoes when I wasn't paying attention. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have fallen, and I wouldn't have lost to you, a latecomer. Hearing her words, the audience below started talking among themselves. This competition was broadcast live online, and the rumor that I used despicable means to win spread quickly on the internet. In the audience, Delilah's fans began to stir up emotions and shouted in unison, Astrid is shameless. Astrid is shameless. Cancel the result. Cancel the result. Because of the cover of the light and shadow, only I saw the smug look on Delilah's face. Sister, originally I wanted to let you off the hook, but you've really hurt my feelings. Since that's the case, I don't mind letting everyone know the truth. I pretended to be sad and wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, as if disappointed after being betrayed. Delilah originally thought that she could make it impossible for me to turn things around, but she didn't expect that I would suddenly play coy. What do you want to do? Suddenly, the huge screen on the stage lit up, and the scene shown on it was exactly the backstage. The time was when Delilah and I had an argument. The surveillance showed that after I went to the toilet with my dance teacher, Delilah sneaked around, took out a bottle of yellow liquid from her bag, and secretly smeared it on my dance shoes. The surveillance clearly recorded her every move. Delilah was only focused on framing her opponent as she did years ago, but she didn't expect that there were surveillance cameras even in the backstage of this competition. I had expected that Delilah wouldn't give up easily, so I didn't wear the dance shoes that were out of my sight at all. Instead, Delilah's agent, in a hurry, accidentally took the dance shoes that Delilah had smeared with oil. The dance shoes were provided by the organizer of the competition and looked exactly the same. So even Delilah didn't notice that the dance shoes under her feet were problematic. This scene of reaping what one sows was an eye-opener for everyone. The fans who had supported Delilah before completely fell silent. Impossible. How could there be surveillance? Impossible. How could I lose to you? How could I lose to you? Delilah struggled on the ground and roared at me, with her eyes full of unwillingness and anger. Why can't I compare to you? I've clearly made a different choice. Why? Something must be wrong. I can't keep losing. Even the championships Delilah had won before were dug out to be manipulated by the capital behind her, and for a while, Delilah's reputation was completely ruined. Later, as the scandal continued to spread, there was no longer a place for her in the ballet world. In order to squeeze out her last bit of value, Victor personally sent her to the beds of various big shots. And Delilah seemed to accept her fate. She couldn't accept the gap in her material life. So in order to continue living a life of luxury and dissipation, she willingly became the mistress of one man after another. In the year of graduation, Delilah got pregnant. She tried to use her child to gain status. She directly went to the wife of the big shot with a big belly and the pregnancy report, trying to force her way in. However, that lady was not to be trifled with. She directly had people tie her up and take her to the hospital for an abortion. In the previous few years, in order to keep losing weight and looking beautiful, Delilah's body had long been overloaded. Coupled with this violent abortion, it directly led to her infertility for life. The sequelae of liposuction and rib removal also gradually emerged. Her legs now had muscle atrophy and could no longer support her to walk. And I was successfully admitted to the top university in the country in July of the same year. After that ballet competition, many companies, just like in my previous life, extended olive branches to me. But this time, I refused them all. Looking at the school gate that I had never dared to dream of in my previous life, I let out a long breath. Everything given by God comes at an equal price. In my previous life, like Delilah, I paid with my health and body. I in this life, however, I seized the opportunity to change my fate with knowledge. Delilah asked me why she still wasn't satisfied even though she had made a different choice. Because she never thought that no matter what choice one makes, there will always be something unsatisfactory behind it. There is never any choice that leads to a smooth path all the way.